Hello again. So this is installment 3 of my guide to getting the best that you can for your individual oral for Language A English. And I've introduced myself in the first one, and in the last one I told you generally what the oral was. Just a quick recap: your oral is a 10-minute presentation. It's an exam which is internally assessed with a 5-minute follow-up question and answer, where the teacher will hopefully go back to some of the good ideas that you've expressed in the oral. How are you going to be graded? Well, you're going to be graded using the criteria from the IB, and the criteria has 4 bands. Criteria A, which is knowledge and understanding and interpretation. Criteria B, analysis and evaluation. Criteria C, focus and organization. And criteria D, language. Each of those criteria are worth 10, and your oral is worth 40 overall. Now, I'm not going to run you through each of the different bands within that criteria. Hopefully your teacher will have provided them to you, and hopefully you are using them in class to mark each other, or to either to self-evaluate or to peer mark. If not, then it's very important to ask your teacher, to please give you access to the criterion. What I'm going to do attaching to this is to simply give you the details of what it requires to get a 7 and an 8 or a 9 and a 10, because we have the bands. We have 0, which obviously no one's going to get, 1 to 2, which hopefully we shan't get, 3 to 4 again, hopefully we'll be getting above, 5 to 6, which many people get, 7 to 8, and 9 to 10. So I will just briefly summarize what it takes to get the 7 and the 8 and the 9 and the 10 in each of those 4 bands. But what I want to stress is that, if you're looking at getting the higher grades, then you need to be showing not just your understanding of the extracts, but linking that understanding to your global issue, and trying to consider how your given author or given text relate to that global issue. So to show knowledge and understanding and to get your 9 and your 10, your criteria blurb goes as follows. So this is your knowledge and understanding and interpretation, and to get a 9 or a 10, and I'm reading here from the IB, you need to show that there is excellent knowledge and understanding of the extracts and of the work or texts, and a persuasive interpretation of their implications in relation to the global issue. References to the extracts and to the works and texts are well chosen and effectively support your ideas. So, knowledge is demonstrated through your understanding of the work as a whole and the extract. Knowledge is supported through your references to the text, which should be well chosen, and I'm going to come back to this in a second, and should allow you to hit criteria B. And knowledge is persuasively put together and presented. Now, that's a little bit of a difficult term, isn't it? What does it mean to be persuasive? But I think that inherently we're looking at the idea that the knowledge that you demonstrate is logically supported in terms of the references that you choose, and is organized in such a fashion that it makes sense and supports your interpretation. I, as an examiner or a teacher, do not have to agree with your interpretation to give you full marks for knowledge, understanding, and interpretation, but I have to be persuaded that it's relevant and valid. So, moving on to B, analysis and evaluation, and thinking about the way that they connect with A, we really want to make sure that we are zooming in closely on our extracts, and we are demonstrating our understanding of writer's technique or of language use. And we are looking at those techniques to show how they reveal a perspective in relation to your global issue. So here again, let's just hear what it means to get 9 or a 10 for analysis and evaluation. Analysis and evaluation of the extract and their works/texts are relevant and insightful. There is a thorough and nuanced understanding of how authorial choices are used to present the global issue. So it's really important that you try to pull A and B together i.e. when you're choosing your textual references that demonstrate your understanding of the text and show and support your interpretation, you choose lines, you choose moments that enable you to talk about a technique. So if you're choosing between two quotes that will support the same idea, obviously you choose the quote that has a writing technique. It might be figurative language. There might be a really important metaphor there, you know, or you choose the quote and that allows you to explore the use of punctuation or repetition. But you make sure that there's something in each of these references that doesn't just show understanding and make you more persuasive, but allows you to talk about choices the author makes and what they reveal about their feelings regarding your global issue. Okay, C is focus and organization. And this, you know, in many ways is quite easy, i.e. it just needs to be logical, it needs to be coherent. However, the key word here is balanced, okay? The oral maintains, again, we're reading 9 and 10, the oral maintains a clear and sustained focus on the task, reasonably easy to do, I think. Treatment of the extracts and works is well balanced. Development of ideas is logical and convincing, and they are connected in a cogent manner. Well, I think much of that most of you do very well, but the word balanced is crucial here. And remember that we're not just talking about the balance between lit text and non-lit text, but we're talking within those two discussions about the balance between your conversation about the extract and then the wider body of work as a whole. The extract and the wider body of work as a whole. So in a way, we're looking at the balance of two parts, but within those two parts, they are again divided into two parts. My advice here, and when we talk about structure, I'll go into it in more detail, is to focus on your zooming in, your really close unpicking when you're looking at your extract. And when you pull back to talk about the wider body of work, you can talk more generally about the choices the author makes. For example, maybe the name, the title of the work, that may be significant. That's an authorial choice, but it doesn't need long, detailed, in-depth unpicking. It's clear, and you can talk about it in a way which me, your examiner, or your teacher is able to understand without needing to see an extract of text in front of them. Okay, last but not least, language. I think language is something that often frightens us, particularly because many of us are not not English, not speaking English as a first language. And therefore, I think that many of you feel that perhaps it's impossible to get top grades. Well, it's not. Your accent has nothing to do with your language use. What we're looking at here is your use of vocabulary, your grammar, and your register. So let me read you 9 one more time, for the last time, sorry, here. Language is clear, accurate, and varied. Occasional errors do not hinder communication. Vocabulary and syntax are varied and create effect. Elements of style are appropriate to the task and enhance the oral. So you do not need to be a native speaker to use language well or to use language badly. A native speaker who may be speaking English fluently may not use the appropriate vocabulary or use the right types of subject terminology. They may fall into a colloquial tone. So all of those things will fundamentally decide the grade that you get in language. What that means is you need to be showing your understanding of terminology. Where will you talk about that? You'll talk about that when you zoom in. So really you're pulling B and D together. You want to sustain an appropriate academic voice throughout, and be very careful when you move on to your question and answer session, because often students feel more relaxed. And as a result, they seem to fall into slang or into more informal language. Don't do that. You are still being examined and your language still counts. If for whatever reason you begin to stumble and fall apart, which is quite natural, you heard me fall apart a couple of times already in this section, then rather than dropping into informal language and using it expletive or swearing or crying or whatever, or pleading, what we want to do is simply say, excuse me, I'm just going to take a moment, I'm going to gather my thoughts, or I'm just going to pause for a second to regroup, something like that. but we keep our academic language there. We don't suddenly panic and start talking as though we're talking to our friend, you know, in the playground. So this again has gone on rather longer than I meant it to. As I say, for each of the criteria, criteria A, criteria B, criteria C, and criteria D, I shall put a very brief summary of what it takes to get the top band in each of them. So we're looking at the 9 and the 10. And as I've said before, each band, knowledge, understanding, interpretation, A, criteria B, analysis and evaluation, C, focus, organization, and D, language, is worth 10. And so your oral is worth 40 overall. And the question probably popping up now is, what's it take to get a 7? Well, that changes year on year as the benchmarks, the grade boundaries shift and change. But, you know, if you're pushing into, you know, mid 30s, you're looking at a 7 for sure. Okay. So, and we don't need to get 9, you know, 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, 10, you know, to get a 7. You can drop perhaps in one band and still get your 7 depending on the boundary. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope that the attached presentation will just give you a short summary of what you're really looking to go for the top band. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that you have access to that criteria. So make sure you politely ask your teacher if they haven't already given it to you, to give it to you, and, you know, try to use it. If it's not being used in class, which it should be, then employ it when you're working on your own work, or apply it to your friends, you know, and do some peer marking together, do some little mock orals and mark each other. And you can focus on just a single band. You might want to just, you know, have a little bit of fun and, you know, think about working on criteria D, language, and do a little, you know, 3-minute recording for your friend, trying to employ appropriate subject terminology and, you know, academic register and effective use of language whilst you discuss, you know, your favorite series on Netflix, whatever it is. You can have a little bit of fun with it. The idea being that you are aware and conscious of the language that you're using and the person that you're speaking to. So until the next installment, I hope that that was a bit helpful, and maybe some of you have noticed that I slightly changed the shelves, which is rather juvenile, but I thought it might be a bit of fun for all of us. And we now have 2 little VW Golfs rather than 1. So Golfs, oh my gosh, 2 VW Beetles. That shows how old I am. There we go. So I hope that was helpful, and see you next time.